When I put my tripod down on the ground, I really want to know about the history of the place.
This is the Jule Museum Podcast. My name is Chris Malinsky, the Janet L. Nolan Director of Curatorial and Educational Affairs here at the museum. Across this academic year, we explore the theme of belonging through American art. This episode features the artist Binh Danh, whose solo exhibition, Binh Danh Advancing American Art, will be on view at the museum all fall. Binh is the recipient of the 2024 William Collins Smith Auburn Award for Advancing American Art. Established in 2023 with a major gift from the Julia and Albert Smith Foundation to recognize excellence in American art. Binh's work as a photographer is remarkable. He experiments with new photographic processes, embedding images into organic matter like plants, leaves, and grasses. His series on the national parks uses the technology of the daguerreotype, the earliest photographic technology, to create contemporary images, landscape photography embedded on a mirrored silver plate. In this episode, Binh talks about how he approaches the practice of photography, how he thinks about landscapes, and ideas of belonging and American identity as reflected in his art.
My name is Binh Danh. I am a visual artist as well as an educator at San Jose State University. So landscape photography was something that's always intrigued me. And my understanding of landscape photography early on as a child was through war photography. So when I was looking at photographs of the Vietnam War as a kid, I saw the landscape. And the landscape was sort of associated with this brutality, death, and, injuries and explosion. The landscape for me was a scary place in a way because through those imageries, I saw the devastation. So it wasn't until I saw the work of Ansel Adams and photography about nature that just appears, throughout my childhood that I realized, the landscape can also be about beauty, about transcendent and the sublime, and about wilderness, and also about camping and having fun and joy. So that was an interesting contrast between my understanding of landscape. And today I do consider myself a landscape photographer. I do a lot of landscape. I do portrait work and still lifes here and there, stuff like that. But I think there's so much to do, so much to photograph when you're out there making pictures of the land. You're thinking about your relationship to the land. When I put my tripod down on the ground, I really want to know about the history of the place, the soil I'm walking on, how the angle I'm pointing. Well, what the name of these landmarks, and what were their name before they became, El Capitan or Three Brothers, were they the indigenous population that were there before it became the United States of America. So hopefully all that it comes through in some way in the work too. So then we can complicate landscape photography. I think people think landscape photography as being very simple and very it's very quiet or very peaceful, but the land is not always peaceful, and it might be peaceful today, but there's always something in the land that I think is further that we need to understand and figure out, and that's been my sort of approach to landscape photography. I'm always interested in I wouldn't say like the darkest side of the land, but just what the land holds, the history of the land. Because, when we think about war having a start date and an end date, but it doesn't have an end date for the ecology of the land, for the people who have to also still continue living there. And so it's all about the atoms. It's all about the elements. all that is still there. And I think through creativity, through art making, an artist could help flush out those stories. As a photographer, I use 19th century processes. So one of my favorite processes to use is the daguerreotype. And so I usually tell people, imagine there was a day imagine a time there was no photography at all, I know. And then it was like January 7, 1839. This new invention was announced. It's like the iPhone just came out or something, and people start catching on this thing called photography. And it was started with the daguerreotype. And it was the first time in human history people could make pictures of themselves. You can actually take this tool that was already been around, the camera mascara that was used in the age of drawing. You can actually put something light sensitive in that camera and record that light. So recording the light has always been an idea of photography, or sometimes people call it capturing a shadow. This shadow is cast onto the piece of paper. And in my case, with the daguerreotype, is captured onto a sheet of silver. And of course, 19th century pictures look like the way they do is because they're 19th century technology. So when I photograph something like Yosemite Fall or the French Quarter, the picture looked 19th century, but it's photographed in this modern time period. So then you see the modern cars, or you see the people in the landscape, or you might see a figure looking at a cell phone standing there on a rock in a picture that's made on a daguerreotype plate. So then people see that connection to the present moment and the past. And the beauty of the daguerreotype is that you can the viewer also see themselves on the surface of the plate. So especially in my photographs of the national park, is that the viewer can also think about themselves and how they relate to this amazing landscape and find a connection to this land, a sense of belonging. So I think a lot of my work is about belonging and how that kind of comes together in that present moment as in looking at the work themselves. So yeah, there's so much quality of the daguerreotype plate and 19th century photography that sort of just, makes us contemplate further about history and the present moment. My family and I left Vietnam in 1979, at the end of 1979. In 1975, South Vietnam fell to the north, and overnight it was a new regime was instated. And so after 2 years living under that new regime, my parents didn't see a future. So my father started planning an escape trip. And this is also part of the story that my parents always mention this, but my brother one day went to school and told the students, his classmate, that we were escaping. So that day, my father was taken away by the authorities and placed into a work camp for a year. And after being released in a work camp, he really wanted to leave. So the trip got delayed a little bit because I was born in 77. And then in 79, we, along with a few other people in the middle of the night, left our homes and kissed our family goodbye, our parents or my grandparents, cousins, who decide to stay. People make their decision if they want to go or stay. And we went into a fishing boat and we sailed out to the South China Sea. And so we were at sea for about 3 weeks. And to escape the authorities, the crew on the top deck pretend they were fishing. So there was these block of ice that were there to sort of, freeze or refrigerate the catch of the day. And so then the stories that was told to me that I was also very sick with a high fever as a baby. And the melting ice, the water from the melting ice kind of cooled my body down. So the crew kept sailing into the South China Sea. They were following the light of the oil ridge out there, where they could see that's getting close to the Malaysian coast. And then we were rescued by Malaysian authority and taken to a refugee camp called Pulau Pidong. And we were there for about a little bit under a year, seeking asylum. So we had many choices if other countries accepted us. I think there was several European countries accepted us first. I think Australia too. And then the United States application came through, and we decided to go to the U.S. And particularly because my father had TV repair skills, his technical skills sort of allow that application to move forward, because I think the U.S. authorities were really handpicking a lot of Vietnamese people with skills. So when a lot of Vietnamese came over, they really from day one contributed back into society. They sort of built the Silicon Valley. We don't think about the manufacturing computer chip in the 80s, but it was all ran by Vietnamese women putting computer chips on circuit boards, until those jobs disappear, and a lot of them went into being manicurists and things like that. It's a quite interesting story. And growing up, it's stories that was told to me, but making art about it would allow me to seek out the story further. So I've been, throughout my college years, I've made work about the Boat People experience. I read up a lot of research and stories about it. Before heading off to graduate school, my mother and I went to Pulau Pidong refugee camp, where we were once stationed, and photographed the camp and find these archival material, which we brought back several of these testimonies of why people escape. And so, I think that the story, it's almost an American story. This country is sort of made up with full immigrants.
Visit the museum to see the exhibition Binh Danh, Advancing American Art, on view through December 7th. All museum programs, including this podcast, are made possible by listeners like you. Visit our website at jcsm.auburn.edu to show your support. Thanks.